Over to you, Mike.
Oh, I thought we were going to do a cool little intro
No.
about how this is, Housemarque's first foray into the triple
Housemarque.
Housemarque. I say Housemarque.
It's Housemarque.
Whatever.
That's what they say.
We should get them on the show, and then they can correct us. Anyway, latest PS5
I think,
exclusive
Marquee
Returnal.
has two E's, by the way. I think that's why.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to say that as well.
I know. I'm sure I'm wrong. Anyway, this is the first foray into like a proper big AAA title. So I managed to get my hands on Returnal on launch day. I traded a couple of games in the previous day. No, I actually ended up trading. I'll talk about it in a sec, but I ended up trading two of my actual games, not the dodgy deal that I was going to do. That I'll talk about it when I talk about the price of this game in a sec. So I got my hands on it. I ended up playing it after work on Friday. Moved my PlayStation back to my main TV, where I've got the proper 4K set up with the good sound and everything else. So the first thing I'll talk about is the sound and the music, because you get those rarish games, I think, where even just the title screen or even just leaving it at the title screen on PlayStation, Xbox doesn't do it. I don't think it's got the same mechanic, but on PlayStation, if you've got the disc in and you just leave it there on the game without even launching the game, it plays sort of the theme song of the game.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is awesome. And even that just captivates you. It's such a cool sort of eerie music to it, that sort of alien-esque vibe, that is very befitting of a game like this. So that struck me as a huge positive when I finally put the game in. The game actually does tell you that you should use headphones with the 3D sound. I didn't, because I've got a 5.1 setup, fortunately.
Do you even have a headset that supports 3D?
No, I don't have one of the official headsets. So I don't know exactly if it will work with my Bose or something like that. But I think it could really benefit from having that closeness. It's not a horror game or anything like that, but it's certainly a game that I think would benefit from from immersing yourself in that sound. And we've spoken about how important music and sound is to games, that a lot of the times it gets forgotten. People think about the graphics, people think about the gameplay, the story, etc. But the music, and you covered this in an earlier segment even today, the silence, as you called it, is so critical. And that is one thing that this game does absolutely fantastically, to the extent that I want to get my hands on the soundtrack. It's that good. Now, in terms of the game itself, so the game is a bit of a mishmash between a roguelite. So roguelites, for people who haven't played those kind of games, and there are quite a lot of people who actually haven't played those kind of games, because one of my mates picked this game up, and it was the contrast was really interesting, because to me this game is exactly what I thought it would be, down to the T. I didn't see a lot of stuff on it, but I saw enough and I read just enough, making sure that nothing gets spoiled, to try to understand what the game's about. And when I started playing it, it is literally exactly what I thought the game would be. Whereas with him, he had never really played roguelites before, not to the extent that I guess I did. So stuff like Dead Cells, Hades, etc. I don't think he ever played those games. So he didn't really know what to expect. And for him, it actually wasn't a positive experience. The whole dying over and over and over again mechanic was not a positive thing for him. It didn't really click. And to the extent that I think he's probably going to return the game today.
He's going to return Returnal. Eh?
He's going to return Returnal, yeah.
Returnal.
Whereas I actually, I knew the concept, and I like the concept, and I'll talk a bit about the pros and cons of the game mechanic like that. But just in terms of the overall mechanics, one thing that struck me, and I think this is kind of a thing that happens with a lot of games, but I think it happens with a lot of roguelite games specifically, is it can be a little overwhelming at the start to understand all the different mechanics that are at play. Even little things. Health isn't called health, as an example, obviously. It's got a specific name in the game, but there is a secondary mechanic related to it that it doesn't click until you sort of play, and then you go, oh, I see what's happening here. So you get your basic health bar, And there's a mechanic that, look, if it's explained in the game, I totally missed it. But for anyone who's playing it that hasn't
we know
seen
you've
it,
never skipped dialogue in games.
no,
before.
I actually not in a game like this. Especially,
I always skip the dialogue.
I do not. When I pick these kind of games, I watch everything. I read all the tutorials. You know, if it comes up with like, press this button to watch the tutorial, I'm always like, yeah, what's the tutorial? Show me.
Thinking back to Project Triangle, whatever it is, Triangle Strategy. Yeah. That's right.
Hey, look, stuff like that I'm rushing through because it's a demo that I don't really care about. Yeah, that's going to happen. With a game like this that I really want to immerse myself in and, you know, sit down, turn the lights off, I look at everything in detail. I take my time. So anyway, one of these mechanics that was really weird is if you're at full health pickups increase your health. They don't instantly increase it, but basically they contribute to one of 3 bars, and every 3 bars that you fill up, you get another 5% health. And that mechanic, I swear, I do not remember anywhere that mechanic being explained anywhere.
Wait,
so for quite a while, I'm confused. I'm like, am I picking health up or am I picking an upgrade up? Like, what am I picking up? They both look the same. They're both green.
Wait, sorry, like, because that was really confusing how you introed that. You said health pickups when you're full health. Increase your health.
Yeah, it's okay. I know this is really confusing. They increase your maximum health. Sorry. Yeah. So if you so the game, I guess, and I'll talk about this in a sec as well. So the game rewards you for playing well, because if you play really well and you're at full health, all the green pickups, which are the health ones, every 3 of those, and you can get, like, you know, bigger amounts, and you can get 2 slots instead of the full just 1 slot to fill up to the 3. It's very confusing just explaining this, but point is, it increases your maximum health by 5%.
Okay.
So it actually really not so much encourages you, but it rewards you and incentivizes you for being really good at the bloody game. Now, that element plays out in other areas as well. So, for example, there's an overload mechanic. So if you reload at the correct time, you get bonuses to that as well. And then the other huge mechanic at play is every 3 enemies that you kill, it increases your some bonuses that you get. Up to a maximum of 5, and those bonuses could be, you can see enemies clearer through the walls, you get more money. I'm not going to mention the in-game currency, but basically let's just call it gold for all intents and purposes. So again, it incentivizes you, because if you're really good and you don't get hit, you're constantly dealing more damage, you're doing better.
So you're saying every 3 enemies you kill without getting hit?
Yeah, it gives you 1 point to it, up to a max of 5. And each tier, you get different bonuses. And they stack. So when you're at tier 5, which is the max tier, you get the bonuses from tier 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And the shooting mechanic is almost like a, third person perspective, bullet hell style shooting style, right? Like, very and it's also quite interesting with the coloring and like just the color choices, because it's very bullet hell style colors of palettes and things like that, which looks kind of weird, but
there are very distinct biomes, like in a lot of these games. So there's this, from my understanding, there's 6 distinct biomes. I only made it up to the 3rd one. I think I was up to the boss of the 3rd one.
So with that bullet hell stuff, it's wild to me that within essentially almost a week of each other, the 2 biggest releases are both have like 3D action bullet hell orbs flying at you.
Yeah.
It's just wild. Like, that's so rare for that to happen in games, and you've got the 2 biggest releases within a week, basically.
You're talking about Nier?
Nier, yeah.
So yeah, of course.
Nier might have been it's the first one I know of that really.
It's definitely
kind of
the first one that I've heard of.
So
it's a very having played Nier Automata, it reminded me of that sort of to the extent that it almost felt not in a bad way, but it felt gamey.
It felt like the enemies
That's exactly
what I was thinking.
I love it.
It's
so
also
much.
Which is cool. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a really cool mechanic. It does kind of in a slight way. So I could imagine that the developers would have had to make some serious decisions on this. I feel because of the nature of the game and how dark it is and how moody and it's very sort of noir sci-fi that it almost in a way takes you away from the world, because the enemies become a little too gamey. it's
a bit
hard
meta,
to describe it. Yeah, but at the same time, it works within the game pretty well.
It's also a really good link back to Housemarque's kind of legacy of those arcade shooters and stuff. Yeah, I think it's like if you were to say, okay, we're going to take what we do and put into this AAA space. I love that they've done this. When I saw, because I didn't know that was a thing until recently, and I started watching that footage. I'm like, man, if they had shown this, maybe they did, but I remember when they revealed this game, that wasn't something that I noticed back then. I would have been like, oh man, what the hell is this? It would have got my attention a lot more.
They spoke about it, but yeah, it's just only recent that they showed it. Can I clarify something, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll define what I understand these terms to mean. So obviously the first game in this genre, Rogue, has now spawned two main terms that people use: Rogue Light and Rogue Like. Rogue Like, in my understanding, and both games feature some kind of, randomly generated, procedurally generated elements, whether they're being placement of items, enemies, levels themselves. I think that's one of the key things. And then you're constantly doing runs. So it's like you'll die and then you'll start from the start. But to me, the difference being with Light, there are some permanent upgrades that you can gain, and like being really like almost none or very limited versions of those.
Yeah, I'd almost say this is a rogue-like.
Is that right, Swinny, by the way? Because you're the expert.
So, by the way, I know that this game does have upgrades and stuff that will carry across runs. So,
but this is what I don't understand, because the developers themselves have said both. That it's a roguelike and a roguelite.
It is. So let me explain.
Yeah.
Let me explain
so
it. That is actually
that's
one of my negatives personally for the game.
Okay.
So it's somewhere in between. So they do reward you with some permanent upgrades, but they're not.
Are they persistent upgrades?
They're persistent upgrades, but they don't benefit your character, if that makes sense. So, without spoiling anything, I'll give you one example. So every time you beat a boss, I've noticed so far, you get an upgrade that allows you to, if you start a new run, it allows you to access an area that you previously couldn't. It's sort of that Metroidvania style gameplay. So without, I won't bother spoiling anything. It's quite obvious for people that play it that there's probably a mechanic introduced, and that is there's a grappling hook that allows you to get to certain parts of the map that you can't on your very first playthrough until you get that particular unlock. And that stuff is permanent, and it does one of two things. One, when you go back through even the very first area, even though you get this upgrade, I believe in the third area from memory, you can get certain upgrades to your suit, or health upgrades, or whatever the case may be, a little earlier, because there's just more options to get those, if you know what I mean. Because the first playthrough, you can't access those places, so you can't get those upgrades during that run. So that's something that I guess is permanent, but that's more of a gameplay mechanic that's permanent, because your actual character does not change. The amount of health you have does not improve from playthrough to playthrough. The shields, there's a few small, like you get a key to access a particular area, but that's more story thing. So in terms of making the game easier for you, I would say, at least from my experience so far, it doesn't. And so to me, that makes it more of a roguelike by the definition you just had. And that is also, to me, in my opinion, a bit of a drawback personally. I mean, I know it's been getting a lot of really positive reviews, and it is a very, very, very good game. But I do find that there's been a few runs where I just went, okay, that was a complete waste of time. I literally got nothing out of that. I just wasted like the last 2 hours in like 3 separate runs, and I made absolutely zero progress towards anything. And to me, that's a huge drawback, because I don't want to sit there playing a game for 2 hours and feeling like I've made absolutely zero progress towards my character. Because you wipe and you start again and you lose everything, and I've also gained nothing in that previous playthrough. And I think that's probably one of the big drawbacks about this, that's going to push a whole bunch of people away from the game. It's not the end of the world in that sense, but I just feel that lack of real achievement every time. There's no reward every time you play. You can play, and you can play for like a couple of hours and completely get wiped, and you just the whole 2 hours just feel pointless, basically. I mean, not pointless in total, because you might learn a new technique, or you might have, come across new enemies and you tried a different approach, or you tried a different weapon that might work a bit better. But all in all, you're not really making real progress towards completing the game in that sense. So to me, that was a bit of a drawback about it. Like I said, though, you can once you unlock a certain area or a new biome, you can shortcut straight to that biome.
And
you still have
that's
to
one of the
find
things
it.
that I was hearing about. To me, that's a massive thing. As soon as you start including
It's
progress shortcuts, to me, that's 100% in the realm of a roguelike, because that is
totally
progression.
is. Yeah, it is. It ultimately is progression. Absolutely. It's just that it's not guaranteed progression, in the sense that you still have the problem of you could keep playing the same area over and over again and dying and making no real progress towards your character, if that makes sense.
So, Mike,
until you hit a checkpoint, so to speak, and then you feel like you've made some form of a progress.
Would you call it a light rogue light?
Like rogue
I like that exasperated reaction. It's great.
How's the you obviously don't get into details, and I know you're not probably far enough in to probably give a full view on this, but how is the narrative that they're kind of like weaving into this playing out?
It's pretty interesting so far. I mean, I can't spoil anything, but there's a few moments where it's told from a first person perspective. It's quite early on, so it's not going to spoil.
They show
anything,
that stuff in trailers and stuff,
and they do, yeah. So you come across. It was actually in a trailer. I remember seeing it as well. You come across your old house, and that almost plays like PT. One of those first-person horror stories that feels so different to the rest of the game in that sense. And I think it's quite interesting. So that's the thing. I want to keep pushing through it, just because I want to see what happens, and I want to see the narrative, and I want to progress and check out the later biomes, see what happens to Serene, the protagonist, and why she got there, and what the heck's going on with the whole lore and everything else. But at the same time, it's really disheartening when you play for a couple of hours and then you wipe, and you literally feel like you've achieved nothing in those last 2 hours. You've just gone through the same stuff you've already done. With maybe like you get like, I don't know, 1 or 2 new pieces of lore or something, which is cool, but it's not the kind of reward that you want for 2 hours worth of playing a game.
I find it really interesting that these days we feel that we need that, as opposed to just the experience of playing,
yeah, but I don't have time. That's the problem. So I don't have time to spend on a game that I feel like it's lottery. It literally is lottery in the end, whether I can progress or not with that game.
But what I'm saying is the experience of actually playing it is not enough for us anymore.
And look, the experience is enough, but I also want the feeling that I can experience the whole game. Whereas my worry in the end with this, and it might not apply to everyone, it's just I'm too time poor to dedicate tens of hours doing the same thing over and over again to just finish this thing, if that makes sense. I love the experience within that. It's very solid. But I feel like they could have rewarded you a little bit better every single playthrough. I don't know how that would have changed the game mechanic, but even if it's something like, there's a potential to get an extra 1% extra health or 1% extra damage every X amount of runs or something, or whatever. Like, just something that is a permanent way that I know that eventually this will be easier. And I'm sure eventually this will be easier, but it does not feel like it so far.
Well, can I just ask a question on that? Is it like you feel like you've been conditioned to like the fact that many of these games in the rogue /light category are starting to move towards giving some form of persistent, permanent upgrades, that a game not really having as much of that is almost like you feel like you're not rewarded, and then you're like, you've grown accustomed to those elements in those games.
Yeah, maybe, but I also ultimately think that it's just a basic reward system for human beings. Is that the more I do something, the more it makes that thing easier. And
but you are, though, you're getting better at the game, and then I'm sure you're
better,
much better at it.
No, that's
hour
true.
1 to hour 10.
The RNG gods, unfortunately, almost completely discount that, because you can So as an example, my third run, so the very first run, minor spoiler here, like any of these games, like Dark Souls, there's a point that you're going to die, and it's scripted basically. I'm sure you can probably do if you play extremely well, kind of like in Dark Souls, get through that. I don't know what happens if you get through that, but inevitably you die. And when you start again, I had my second run, and the second run was kind of averagey, and then the third run, I managed to get through 3 biomes because I just happened to hit a really good number of upgrades that just work really well, either for my gameplay style or they happen to be quite good in the way they synergized. And then I died eventually. And beyond that point, my runs were so much shorter because I just kept getting really crap stuff. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, this is really weird. Like I'm facing the same boss that I found relatively easy in my previous run, yet I just don't have good abilities or good weapons at the moment. So even though yes, you do get better every single playthrough, because it's ultimately not the same game. It's not like Dark Souls where you die, you learn, you get better, you improve, and it's all up to you. It's totally 100% how good you are, and you persist and you win. Whereas with this, there's too much randomness involved for you to say that, yes, I learned something new. It's all about me learning how to play better, etc. There's definitely an element of that, but there's too much randomness involved as well. So, look, anyway, to cut it short, it's a great game. Do I think it's worth the $125 that in Australia they're currently asking for it? I don't think so. I think that to me this feels more like maybe sort of a $70 kind of game. And I'm not saying that because all roguelites tend to be relatively cheap compared to full price games, because this is a pretty good title. But all in all, when you sort of peel the onion and you really look at the layers, I don't think it's the $125 that they're asking for it. Certainly more than a standard indie game, if you could call it that, but not that amount. Do recommend it, but maybe it's a bit of a rental for people who haven't sort of played these kind of games. And
rental? Who rents games these days?
EB Games, we talked about them, so you can 100% totally rent. You got 7 days to play it. Don't like it, you return the game back. So I think there's going to be, no pun intended, once again, a whole bunch of returns for this game.
Returnal, I hope they've got good Returnal policies.
Jesus, I kind of agree with you on that, Mike. I think that this is the kind of game that a lot of people will pick up because it's reviewed so well. Like it's like 86, 87 on Metacritic, which is insane. And I just don't think it will click with a lot of people. So no, really good first impressions.
Thanks.
I'm keen to know if you keep playing it and if you beat it, because you're pretty good at these games.
I'm going to persist a little bit more. I will, but I do. To be honest, I do feel like there's a part of me in the back of my mind that says too many other games to play. I don't have the time to feel like I've just spent 2 hours achieving nothing.
I've also heard that like you should keep playing past what you think you would normally stop. I'll just put that out.
As in, keep pushing yourself. So don't redo
past what you think the ending is.
Yes, past what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard about that. Yeah. The only thing I don't know, just to wrap it up, is if it's a good strategy to every time you wipe, start again from the start, so you get all the upgrades, or take the shortcut to the latest level you've been up to, because so obviously enemies go in level and the weapons change in level, and it does scale the moment you go in there. And if you pick something else up, you can get like a scaled up version of the weapon straight away. But so I don't know what the best strategy is, but of course it's the problem is you don't have all the other upgrades, so your health is really crap. It's the default health. You don't have any upgrades, so it's So I'm gonna try different strategies, and hopefully I'll persist, and I'll let you guys know how that goes.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next story. So I'll be a bit brief because we are running long.